Hey guys, so I was asked a few questions to give the differences between street fighting and ring fighting. So I'll give it a shot. I wrote down a list of questions, and I actually wrote down the answers as well, so I don't make too many errors when I speak. All right, so the what's my experience between the two? All right, so those who follow my channel probably already know that this year I'm celebrating 50 years. 50 years, yeah, I'm getting old of experience. So I started around 1971, and so throughout the 50 years, one of my biggest passions is, apart from Wing Chun, is boxing. I put in a lot of years of mixing boxing with Wing Chun. I did about 10 amateur fights. Throughout all that as well, I combined a lot of kickboxing as well. And throughout that, did some basics of Savate, Greek-Roman wrestling, grappling, as, eskrima, weapons, various weapon systems, some basics in Jeet Kune Do, and the list goes on and on. So the three different lineages. You could say four. I did about 1.5 years in Italy with Sifu Cangellosi. That was in the 80s. So, but and then eventually around 2009, 2010, I created my own system of Wing Chun, which is called Wing Chun Da. So that's my basic history. I probably left some things out, but anyway, that's the basic history. So, there is a big difference between the two. I could say that what the advantages are in ring fighting, which helped me on the street, is that when you're learning boxing, for example, boxing really helps you out with your timing. All right, so timing is such a big advantage. Like on the street, like I did security for so many years, and what one of the big advantages on the street is that if you're learning security, working in security, big difference between the two is that in security things go into escalation really quickly. All right, so you don't really have the time like you would in the ring. All right, in the ring you get time to sort of warm up, you study your opponent, you get to have so many rounds. You have your ref to sort of sort things out. You have your doctor on the side, and like if things go bad, you're safe. You know what I'm saying? You have time to prepare for the match, etc. On the street or security, I'll relate the street only to my years of experience in security. Okay, that's what I consider the street. Some other guys will relate the street as maybe going into a disco or walking down the street, bumping into somebody, or something goes into escalation, or maybe rape victims or bullyism at school. I mean, there are so many categories what you could consider the street. In any case, one of the main differences is how quickly something can happen. And if you're not prepared for the street, and the fact that you're not prepared and somebody all of a sudden attacks you or robs you, it's a shock to the system. And the fact that you have to deal with shock because you're not prepared for it, this was an interesting point that Bas Rutten, you can go into his self-defense videos. It says that your breathing system really reacts in a bad way because they talk about first wind, second wind, etc. So if you're not, even a trained athlete who's not prepared, goes into a way of breathing that he gets shocked and he can't react as well as he'd like to, because if he's overtrained, he's really, really well trained. Normally in a ring fight, he needs to prepare 3 or 4 rounds before he can warm up. So if he's not warmed up on the street, he can actually freeze his muscles and not react as quickly as he'd like to. So if a well-trained athlete can't react as well as he'd like, can you imagine a normal guy who's not well-trained? So, just weigh things out, you know what I'm saying? So they're one of the main differences, because the next question is that how do the two difference? How do the two differ? And that's the thing. When you go into the ring, you do have time to warm up. You do have time to sort out, know a bit about who you're going to fight. You know what you have to prepare for. You know who you're going to be fighting. Whereas on the street, you don't. You don't know anything. You don't even know what's going to happen. And so on the street, you have the problem that, let's say you do go, in my case, I did many years on the door by myself, because in Italy, or at least where I work, we got cheapskate owners who don't want to pay. And I did the door for 10 years on my own, 6 nights out of 7. All right, and that's hard yakka, man. You do 6 nights out of 7 on your own, and then sometimes you got 7 or 8 angry guys in front of you, and see how you handle that, right? And you can say all you want, hey man, they might be drunk, they might be this, they might be that, but if they're twice as big as you, right, and you got 8 of them, see how you handle that, and then let's talk. All right, so what happens there? How do the two differ? That if you got 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, they get angry and they feel sure that they can take you out, and you got 3 guys coming at you, you got to be quick, you got to react quickly, you got to put everything into it, and so your reflexes have to be very quick and dynamic. You don't have time to dance around, you don't have time to think, you don't have time to do any type of strategy. You just have to react, all right? And you might even have a team of bouncers or a security team, and you might be in a disco or a nightclub or whatever. And in our case, when I worked with a team, sometimes we had a squad of 20 guys, and we'd have to look after 2,000 people. What do you do? What do you do if a riot breaks out, and which has happened? And you've got 60 people throwing chairs, bottles, or knives come out, and stuff like that, I mean, this guy here is a bottle that I got, ended up, I don't know how long in hospital, and it was a small cut, just to give you an idea. I didn't even feel it till about, 4 days later, until my muscles swelled up like this, So they're the main differences, So I might be getting off track. The advantages that you get with ring fighting or training for a fight, for example, boxing, is that you do get really good timing. And if you know how to convert that into the street, right? I mean, I do Wing Chun and I did boxing. So what helped me with boxing and how I converted that into Wing Chun is that the experience of timing, for example, the fact that we would do a lot of sparring in boxing, and we really had a good team. I trained with the Fernet Branca in Italy at the time. I went off to Italy, and then when I was in Australia, we had this guy on South Road, Birdie's gym, that I would go to. But more or less we worked the same thing. We would work on a lot of timing, and just getting the jab in for the timing was really important. And the fact that we worked on timing really helped me on the street. So I converted that, and it's not like I would dance around on the street and use the jab to get in. It's just the fact that I had a really good eye. And so how I converted that into Wing Chun was that as soon as I would see the right moment, bang, I would go through and throw in my chain punches, right? And come in and close the distance, But even that is a complicated story, is because you don't even want to necessarily hit the guy, but unless it's absolutely necessary, because in security, the law states that you may not necessarily want to hit a guy. you may want to get him into lever and stuff like that. So hitting is something that you want to do as a last resort. But sometimes you can't help it, you have to do it. I'll see if I've answered the question. Okay, so we talked about that, and then talk about street. There's definitely more dangers, right? Look, I remember getting into a fight, where there were three guys, all right, and I was fighting three guys, and luckily, I had one of the owners come in and help me, because at the time I was able to take two guys out, right? And one of the guys was getting up. The guy I was holding at the time, I was hitting him, but the guy was so, clear in his head, like he was still lucid. And as I was hitting him, man, he was going for a knife at the back of his pocket, right? Anyway, the owner saw that he was going for a knife at the back of his pocket. I saw it too, but he was like bent down, right? And even though I was hitting him on his back and I was trying to get him out, he was still clear enough in his head to go get his knife. So one of the owners came in. He just came in like a bull and boom, with all his body, he managed to throw him out the door, and we were able to take care of the situation. So, there's so many dangers that are unforeseen on the street that you won't get in the ring. So you got to understand that there are these realities, right? Another situation, I think the news article is still on the street. I don't know if you can see it on my head. One night got attacked by three thugs. I don't know if legally I'm allowed to talk about it, right? There's this nightclub where I was doing 6 nights a week. It was a vengeance thing. They surprised me. They got one guy that they sent the guy to distract me. I was looking at him here as he was talking to me. Next thing I know, 2 other guys came in really quickly from this side here, and I was talking to him. They came in with 2 clubs. The clubs they use for sledgehammers, the wood that holds the sledgehammers, right? Without the actual metal part of the sledgehammer. They came, and I was talking to him. I went, huh? I went like this, and wham, right here. Anyway, blood was pissing out of my head. Sprayed him to his face, and I didn't fall down, but I felt like my whole body just went crunch. It's like, it just went crunch. And my blood was pissing in his face. He said, "You motherfucker," in Italian. And I said, "Do it again." So he did. And so I blocked him, right? And the wood actually smashed off my arm. So thank God I did a lot of wooden dummy training. I know you might think this is bullshit, like, talking about traditional martial arts, but thank God I did a lot of wooden dummy training, because I didn't feel shit on my arm. It broke, right? And the cops, when they came later, they couldn't believe that I broke it with my arm, but I did. And I was able to ward off 2 attackers that had clubs and smash up the guy that distracted me. And I survived it. Fucking don't know how I did it. But, this is another big difference between ring fighting and street fighting. So, for those who laugh at, oh, there's a big difference between street and ring, you go live these experiences and then tell me what you think. Okay, that's another difference. All right. Next question. Who is tougher, a ring fighter or a self-defense instructor? What a stupid question. Generally speaking, a ring fighter should be tougher. A ring fighter or a guy who lives, like in the MMA or UFC, generally they should be tougher, because that's what they do for a living, So, I think I'm reasonably tough. I'm not as big as I used to be. I used to weigh about 104 kilos. Then I had this fucked up pathology that screwed me up, but nevertheless, I'm still tough. But what's there to prove? toughness. The important thing is that there's a big difference between teaching and fighting. All right, a fighter has to do what he has to do. You can't resolve all your problems of fighting only in the ring. Fighting is real life as well, right? So, when I teach martial arts, I look at it as when I teach security, cops, military, and our mindsets are concentrated on real life situations. So we have programs to deal with, take off my glasses for a sec, on conflicts that would happen, that deal with a lot of the riots situations or problems that break out, with these types of conflicts every day, or with abuse or bullyism or with rape victims. And so it's like a rapid fire conflict, right? And so the type of sparring that I propose is different to maybe, sparring continuously for rounds and rounds and rounds. It would be sparring that's very intense, that, would go, something that would be more similar to someone that's trying to, how's the word saying, how do you say it in English? Agredir, that's someone that tries to take you out quickly, right? So the sparring would be more similar to someone who really tries to take you out quickly. I tried to bring that close as possible to, we did competitions. Now that we have COVID, I haven't been able to do these competitions, but I tried to do something similar to that when we did the belt competitions. So what I tried to do is get that as similar as possible, where basically I tie two people up, get them as close as possible so they wouldn't run away. And so the idea was, like, if somebody really wants to take you out, they'll come in and destroy you as quickly as possible. I'll give you an example. I had these cops that asked me for some help. And I said, right, what's the problem? And they said, right, we have in one part of the city, in Genova, where these people from another country that's taking a big part of the neighborhood in Genova, they were robbing people. And the way they were doing it was, they were doing it in groups of three, right? And so there was one little guy who would look meek and mild, and they would look, very humble and, nice guy. And they would go out and they'd say, hey, look, I've got a problem, this and that. And they would attack a specific group of people that would look weak, right? And they'd say, oh, look, I need some help, this and that. And obviously the nice person would stop and help them out, right? And the moment they stop and help them out, obviously they were targeted. The other two guys would just jump out, rapidly beat the crap out of them, rob them, and then run off, right? And, they were targeting all these people. And this sort of stuff is still happening today. In fact, it happened to my neighbor just recently, to his father, who's around, 88 years old. It really pisses me off, this sort of stuff. So what do? I mean, this is rapid stuff. So, you can't spar for three rounds. This is why I get sort of in conflict when I hear this stuff, right? You see, your sparring methodology has to be more related to a more intense type of reaction. You have to be quick. You have to be, it has to be different. It has to be more intense. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, this is my point of view. This is the way we train these guys, especially with the cops, especially with the military and stuff like that. And then again, it sounds like I'm criticizing MMA or boxing and stuff like that. I'm not, because I know these guys are tough. I mean, geez, they're taking hits, they're taking stuff. But all I'm saying is that there is a distinct difference between the two. You know what I'm saying? There is a distinct difference. And so what I'm saying is that it's not like we're not taking hits or we're not doing this and that. But, you know, if you go on videos on YouTube, all you need to do is look at what happens in riots, what happens in street abuse and stuff like that, and you'll see the difference. Anyway, no matter what you say, you get criticized. Okay, how do I perceive traditional martial arts? Okay, traditional martial arts, I guess a lot of people look at traditional martial arts as a way of preserving it culturally, or retaining the forms, or memorizing all like in Wing Chun's case, chi sao formations, etc., etc. Personally, I've always looked at it as a way, as traditional, as a way of observing the way combat techniques originated, and the way it originated for warfare hundreds of years ago. So when I look at the forms and stuff like that, I like to study the way a technique would have been utilized, hundreds of years ago, and then express myself that formation in today's applications. And that makes me think differently and apply it differently. And it makes me look at the interpretation of the art in a different way. And it makes me, even on a biomechanical level, look at the art in a different way as well. So, for example, I don't look at Wing Chun no way the same way that I used to look at it, years ago. I look at it, I think that if people see me doing Wing Chun, the stuff that I put on videos, it's got nothing to do with the way I probably express Wing Chun to my students on a personal level. I think if they saw me, they'd say, "What are you doing? That's not Wing Chun." You know what I'm saying? Fair enough, what can I do? But that's the way I see it. I look at it more as an interpretation of the way the art would have been practiced and the way it was intended originally, hundreds of years ago. Next question. Do I consider MMA the ultimate fighting method? Okay. I think MMA is really good. Personally, I train with a few guys in that arena. I train with one guy who's like 20 kilos heavier than me, who's a Greek-Roman wrestler, and I feel like I've done 3 hours of weight training after I've trained with him. So let's put it this way, I'm not a guy who goes around like this. I mean, you've probably understood that by now. So I'll still maintain my personal perspective as street versus ring as two different realities, all right? And I think they should be trained as two different realities, right? It would be nice if there was less arguing, and maybe the two worlds could meet and start to respect each other. I think that with the crap that's happening of late, there are genuine TMA guys, traditional martial arts guys like myself, who do a lot of research, that do a lot of training for reality, and we do our best to try and help society, which is what our aims are, and put a lot of hours into it. So, especially when we have to deal with the public, and but I believe there's a definite difference between the two. And I'm not one to criticize other systems anyway, simply because, I cross-train. But the approach to train these dealt with, in different ways, that's different. And anyway, it all depends at the end of the day on how effective the teachers are, and how effective, the schools are and how they deal with, the students. You have to understand that when you're teaching, there's different types of people that come and do martial arts. You have teachers, you have people who do it part-time, you have old people, you have young people, you have kids, and, and people do it for different reasons. So it's not always easy to teach everyone. And I think that's probably the key word. Teaching and how to teach is probably one of the hardest things to do. And for me, that's always a game changer. How to teach is probably one of the hardest things. I'm always learning every day. So, one thing's for sure, I've always kept an open mind. I've always cross-trained. For sure, Wing Chun is my number one system, but I've learned to integrate other systems, and but mainly, let's put it this way, I've globalized Chi Sao, for anybody who understands Chi Sao, on a mental level, on a psychological level, and on a physical level. I learned to integrate that globally, be it for Wing Chun and into other systems. And I felt that I've been able to express that mainly through all the martial arts systems that I teach. So that's the main thing. So they're the main questions that I was asked. So hope I've answered them well. And okay, I think I've spoken too much anyway. So hope you're able to listen to me and put up with me, and we'll catch you in the next video.